Many big lie backers are campaigning to control the election systems in their states, including a candidate in Michigan who peddles conspiracies and lies. Here's Sarah Murray.
A vocal critic of elections now wants to be in charge of them.
It is completely criminal.
Christina Caramo has not been shy in insisting there was widespread cheating in the 2020 vote, touting debunked claims.
It is not right that hundreds of thousands of votes are allowed to be considered as lawful votes when we know they're illegal.
And saying Donald Trump was the true winner in Michigan.
Donald Trump won Michigan.
Unsurprisingly, she now has Trump's backing in her bid to become Michigan's next Secretary of State.
Yeah, so I have President Trump's endorsement, which is massive.
Caramo has never run for statewide office, but gained some national notoriety after making unsubstantiated claims that she witnessed election fraud in 2020.
I was a poll challenger at the TCF Center.
As Trump eyes a potential 2024 comeback bid, he's backing candidates like Caramo and others who've spread election falsehoods, looking to replace the battleground state officials who stood up to Trump's attempts to overturn the results in 2020.
Christina Caramo!
A CNN review of Caramo's podcast and writings on her now defunct personal website reveal previously unreported comments that show extreme views beyond just the 2020 election results and reveal barbed criticism of both parties.
There are a bunch of traitors in the Republican Party.
But her most inflammatory language is aimed at Democrats.
Their party has totally been taken over by a satanic agenda.
Including Michigan's current Secretary of State.
She's an evil woman. She's a very evil, evil, evil woman.
Caramo's staunch conservatism intermingles with her religious beliefs.
Ultimately, the culture war is really the most important war we fight.
A community college adjunct professor, Caramo has a master's degree in Christian apologetics, traditionally the defense of Christianity. Among her concerns, evolving norms around gender and sexuality, views she often takes to the extreme.
There is no such thing as a person with two mommies and two daddies. That is just factually incorrect.
In an August 2019 blog post, she called transgender women trying to play women's sports mentally ill adults playing dress-up. She suggested in a podcast that premarital sex paves the way for society condoning pedophilia.
When we normalize people fornicating and we normalize people living together with their boyfriends and girlfriends and all this stuff, we opened a door for us to get to the point where we have people want to normalize pedophilia.
She has called public schools indoctrination camps.
You're forced to have your child be exposed to all types of unbridled wickedness that these Democrats and liberals want to teach.
And is against teaching about evolution.
Evolution is one of the biggest frauds that are perpetrated on us.
She also referred to herself as an anti-vaxxer before the COVID-19 vaccines were authorized.
Guess what? I'm crazy. I'm an anti-vaxxer.
These views now under the spotlight as she seeks the Republican nomination.
One of the things that I try very cognizant of, I'm running a statewide race, and I understand I have to win the hearts and minds of people who may not necessarily think like me.
Joining us now to discuss this is Jim Acosta, CNN anchor and chief domestic correspondent. There is so much, look, we don't need more evidence, right? We know there was an attempted coup, a failed coup, but just the headlines that are piling up here to support that, it seems endless.
Yeah, I mean, we had a coup attempt in this country. I mean, we just have to come to grips with that. We have to deal with that reality, and we have to get to the bottom of it. I was talking to a couple of sources on the January 6th committee. One of these sources said, unless Merrick Garland acts and compels these witnesses to testify, that is going to severely undercut the strength of the committee. And another source said to me, about why these witnesses aren't testifying. This person said, why would they? They're not being forced to testify. And we have, a mountain of evidence, a growing mountain of evidence that there was a coup attempt in this country. And Brianna, what we're dealing with right now, I think, is a cowardice pandemic. We have a pandemic of cowardice. We have Republicans who are unwilling to police their own ranks. And until we have that day come, we're going to be caught in the grips of the MAGA comeback. And they're coming back, and mainly because we're letting them come back. Not that there's anything wrong with a political movement rising up in this country, but when at the heart of it is a coup attempt and people who want to undermine our democracy, there's a very serious problem.
I have to talk to you about this Sidney Powell headline from John Carl's book, where Sidney Powell, who's a former Trump lawyer, fell for a conspiracy theory that then CIA Director Gina Haspel had been injured on a secret mission she was taking to Germany to seize an election-related computer. This is part of what Carl says in the book. The server Powell claimed contains evidence that hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of votes had been switched using rigged voting machines. Of course, she wasn't in Germany. She was fine. She is fine. But what does it say to you that these QAnon conspiracy theories were that close to the president?
I mean, I was standing outside the White House, around that time and remember seeing Mike Lindell on his cell phone outside the West Wing. And I'm thinking to myself, why is the My Pillow guy hanging out outside the West Wing? And I called him that night, and he was there to drop off evidence for Donald Trump, and it was accepted by people in the West Wing. I mean, this just goes to show you, Sidney Powell is another one of these characters, these, circus-like characters, Star Wars bar-like characters who were hanging around Donald Trump at the time. I talked to a Trump advisor after January 6th and asked, what was Sidney Powell doing, advising Trump, advising his team? And this advisor said, these are the types of people who are around the president of the United States right now. It's not the normal folks who are in the West Wing or semi-normal, depending on your point of view. It's people like Sidney Powell. It's people like Rudy Giuliani. It's people like Michael Flynn and Mike Lindell. And it just goes to show you the kind of people that Trump was surrounding himself with during that very critical point in our nation's history. I mean, it's frightening to think about it. I mean, but why is Sidney Powell running? I mean, again, going back to the January 6th committee, where are the hearings? Where is the Justice Department? Why are they not hauling these people into Congress to explain what they were up to? Why aren't we seeing more indictments? I mean, I think there's a real serious hunger out there, Brianna, for justice. I mean, you and I remember all of those rallies where Donald Trump would talk about law and order. Where's the law and order? It just does not exist when it comes to a coup attempt in this country. It's insane.
Well, I wonder what you think about Mike Flynn's episode here that John Carl has uncovered, where he was trying to enlist help from the Pentagon to seize ballots.
Yeah. I mean, and Michael Flynn, who was already indicted once for lying to investigators.
He was fresh off a pardon when he did this.
Fresh off a pardon, I guess wants to go for another one. Not going to get it, obviously, from this president. But, again, we're going back to the insanity that we were all caught in the middle of at that moment. Michael Flynn is somebody who should have never been national security advisor. Barack Obama warned Donald Trump famously, don't hire Michael Flynn. And yet he brought him into the mix. If Donald Trump becomes president again, what's to stop a Mike Flynn from becoming defense secretary? It's going to be a whole lot easier for a Secretary of Defense, Michael Flynn, to order people to seize ballot boxes if he's in charge of the Pentagon. One of the things I, experienced, Brianna, covering the Trump administration is that there were people, at various levels of the federal government who were willing to sort of put the brakes on the crazies inside the Trump administration. And fortunately, that's what we saw in this episode. There were people, for example, in the Flynn episode, according to Carl's book, who were basically saying no to Michael Flynn. People who are going over to the Justice Department and saying we need to go back and, recount these ballots in various states. Fortunately, there were people at the Justice Department saying no. So, thankfully, we did have people at various levels of the government who were protecting the Constitution. Who's to say that that's the case next time?
Yeah, look, this was a stress test. It revealed weaknesses. Is anything being done to fix them?
Vulnerabilities are there, no question.
They certainly are there. Jim,
Yeah.
great to have you on. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you.